There's a story most people tell themselves about toxic relationships. That they happen to people who didn't know better. People who were too naive, too insecure, too uneducated to see what was right in front of them. It's a comforting story. It creates distance. It says, that couldn't happen to me. The data destroys that story completely. Researchers studying survivors of narcissistic and psychopathic relationships consistently find that targets score above average on measures of intelligence, empathy, professional achievement, and conscientiousness. Dr. Sandra L. Brown, who spent over a decade profiling women who ended up with psychopathic partners, concluded that the profile of the target is not weakness, it's a very specific set of cognitive and emotional strengths that certain personalities are drawn to exploit. Intelligence doesn't protect you from toxic relationships. In specific ways that psychology has now documented clearly, it makes you more vulnerable to them. Here's why. Reason 1. High empathy is a feature manipulators actively look for. Intelligent people, particularly those drawn to understanding complex systems, whether in work, science, art, or human behavior, tend to score high on cognitive empathy. The ability to model another person's inner world with precision. Common sense says empathy protects you. You can read people, detect dishonesty, understand motivations. But cognitive empathy cuts both ways. A 2018 study published in Personality and Individual Differences found that individuals high in dark triad traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, deliberately target partners with high empathy scores. Not because they're easy, because they're useful. A highly empathetic partner will consistently explain away bad behavior, extend the benefit of the doubt, and absorb emotional volatility without leaving. Dr. Brown's research makes this explicit. Psychopathic individuals don't choose victims randomly. They identify, test, and select. High empathy is not a coincidence in who they pursue. It is the criteria. Your ability to understand other people's pain was weaponized against you before you knew there was a weapon. Reason 2. Intelligent people rationalize red flags instead of feeling them. Here is a critical distinction that most people don't understand. Cognitive intelligence and emotional intelligence are almost entirely separate systems. You can have a very high IQ and function at the emotional intelligence of someone who has never examined their inner life. They are not the same skill, they don't develop together, and high achievement in one says almost nothing about the other. Dr. Daniel Goleman, whose foundational research on emotional intelligence revolutionized organizational psychology, documented that analytical performance and emotional attunement operate through distinct neural pathways. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for logic, analysis, long-term planning, and the limbic system, responsible for emotional signaling and threat detection, frequently work against each other. Highly analytical people have often spent years training themselves to override emotional discomfort in service of a goal. To push through, rationalize, and solve. This is exactly what makes them effective professionally. In a toxic relationship, it becomes a liability. When your gut signals danger, your brain constructs an explanation for why the danger isn't real. When you feel something is wrong, you produce a framework for why you're overreacting. You intellectualize the feeling out of existence. You weren't ignoring red flags. You were very efficiently explaining them away. That is a different problem, and a much harder one. Reason 3. Chaotic people read as complex, and intelligent people are drawn to complexity. Think about what bores a high-functioning mind. Predictability. Simplicity. The absence of stimulation. Now think about what the early stages of a toxic relationship feel like. Intensity. Unpredictability. Depth. Someone who seems to contain contradictions. Someone who is brilliant and wounded and fascinating and volatile in ways you've never encountered. To an intelligent person seeking stimulation, this registers as interesting. Possibly as the most interesting person you've ever met. Psychologist Aidan Graney's research on sensation-seeking and relationship selection found a consistent pattern. Individuals with higher cognitive complexity actively prefer partners who present psychological mystery, even when that mystery is dysfunction disguised as depth. The chaos wasn't depth, but it felt like depth. It engaged every pattern recognition system you had. That engagement felt like connection. By the time the difference became clear, the attachment was already formed. Reason 4. A problem-solving brain treats the relationship as a problem to solve. This is perhaps the most specifically dangerous trap for high-achieving people. You are, by nature and training, someone who sees a problem and works to fix it. That approach has probably produced real results in your life, in your career, in your creative work, in every domain that responds to sustained effort. A toxic partner presents as a problem with a solution just out of reach. If you communicate better, if you're more patient, if you understand what they went through, if you can find the right moment, the right words, the right approach. Dr. Lundy Bancroft, who spent 2 decades working with abusive partners in clinical settings, documents this pattern in survivors with striking consistency. The more intelligent and capable the person, the longer they persist, because their entire identity is built around the belief that sustained effort and intelligence solve problems. What they haven't yet integrated is this: you cannot solve a dynamic where the other person benefits from the problem remaining unsolved. The relationship isn't broken. For one person in it, it is functioning exactly as intended. Applying your best skills to this situation is not a path out. It is the mechanism that keeps you in. Reason 5. The smarter you are, the better you are at justifying sunk costs. Behavioral economists Hal Arks and Catherine Bloomer established in their foundational research that humans are psychologically wired to overinvest in losing propositions simply because of what has already been invested. The more you've put in, the harder it is to leave. But here is what rarely gets discussed: this effect is amplified by intelligence. Because intelligent people don't just feel the sunk cost. They build a case for it. They construct coherent, well-reasoned narratives for why this relationship still has potential. Why this time will be different. Why the good moments justify the cost of the bad ones. Why the history they've built together has objective value that walking away would destroy. These aren't irrational thoughts. They're very sophisticated rationalizations produced by a mind that is excellent at building arguments, and is now, without realizing it, arguing against its own interests. The intelligence that could reason you out is being used to reason you further in. Reason 6. Love bombing is specifically calibrated for intelligent, high-value targets. This is the part no one wants to hear. The overwhelming intensity of the early relationship, the feeling of being truly seen and understood for the first time, chosen above everyone else, offered a connection that felt unlike anything you'd experienced, was not accidental. And it was not random. Research on dark triad individuals and partner selection, including work by Dr. Jonasson and Webster published in Personality and Individual Differences, shows that narcissistic and psychopathic individuals display sophisticated social intelligence in mate selection. They observe. They gather information. They identify what a specific person values most deeply: their intelligence, their achievements, their longing to be truly understood, and they mirror it back with precision. For an intelligent person who has spent a lifetime struggling to find someone who operates at their level, being suddenly seen completely by someone equally compelling is overwhelming. That experience was real. The neurological response was real. The attachment it created was real. The person who created it was performing it. This distinction matters enormously, not because it erases the pain, but because it relocates the source of it. Here is what I need you to take from this. If you are an intelligent person who has been in a toxic relationship, or who is in one right now, and you have spent any amount of time asking yourself how you could have let this happen, I want you to hear this clearly. Your intelligence was not absent. It was targeted. The empathy that makes you perceptive was the precise quality that was selected for. The analytical mind that builds frameworks was turned into a machine for manufacturing reasons to stay. The depth you sought was the disguise the chaos wore. The problem-solving brain that achieves things in every other area of your life found a situation specifically structured so that solving it was impossible. None of this is about how smart you are. The practical reality is this: intelligence will not get you out of this the same way it didn't prevent you from getting in. Reasoning your way to safety doesn't work when reasoning is the mechanism keeping you trapped. What works is something different. It is one honest conversation with a therapist, a counselor, or someone who has studied these dynamics, not to be told what to do, but to have your perception of reality confirmed by someone outside the system. Because the single most powerful tool a toxic relationship has is making you question whether what you are experiencing is actually happening. It is happening. You are not too smart to see it. You were smart enough to be chosen for it.